Welcome. Today's workshop on agentic software development is presented by our very own Professor YOSEF Skolnick from the Computer Science Department at Touro GST.
So we're going to go through a whole bunch of different layers and sort of understand a little bit about what we're trying to do. I mentioned the word agentic, and so I wanna really define what we're really talking about. So it seems like when we say beginner, just want to actually get a little bit more feedback. When people say beginner or intermediate, means that they're using like ChatGPT, they're using Gemini, they're going on like deep research, or they're using it like in something like anti gravity or Claude Code or Cursor or something or Cowork. You can by the you can come off you can come onto video and you can talk. This is an interactive session.
So as far as my experience goes with AI, it's I try to build agents using the free version of I forgot the name. It's been 2 weeks. I haven't touched that yet. But some things that I'd like to build is filter out jobs on LinkedIn. Like if any a workflow basically which can read any candidate resume.
Mm-hmm.
According to resume experience, they can search on the LinkedIn jobs. So that's a
So
kind
it
of
sounds like you're mentioning two different types of agents here, right? So
yes,
one
yes,
one type of agent, and we're going to discuss both.
yes.
One type of agent is sort of building coding pieces, right? The agent itself goes through and teaches, not teaches, and does actions, right? It writes the code, it does actions, and it plans. The other part, the other way that the other type of agent they were talking about was similar. It also uses some sort of tools and some sort of planning and some sort of actions, but it's doing it in either the browser or it's doing it using some sort of API. Right. So
Yeah.
those are two types of agents. Okay. So someone else, what other uses have people used?
I'm Simple Cohen. I work as a software engineer, so I've been
Okay.
using Cursor a lot. I want to get more into Claude just because it's more like advocated for at my company.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
want to get to know Claude a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been using Cursor like all the time.
Okay.
Code.
That's great. Okay, so what are you using it for documentation? Are you using it for the code generation? Are you using it for planning? Are you using it for testing to see what's going on? Are
Yeah,
you
all
using
of
it
it.
all of
Using
that?
it
Okay,
to learn more about repos, using it to create PRs, using it to write code, testing, docs, everything.
right. Okay. So those are all some of the pieces that people are using right now in the coding industry, right? So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go through in a slightly ordered fashion here. We're touching on a lot of the topics that we're gonna talk about, and then along the way, we're also going to have I'm going to basically create four apps in real time using four different, I think maybe three different tools. We're going to end up doing. And we'll see. We'll sort of dissect what it is what's actually happening under the hood, because you can use a tool like Lovable or Claude Code or Cursor or whatever, but not really know what it's doing and why it's doing it. And that's sort of what's often taught in for example, the masters in AI. Okay, so we're gonna see what an agent actually is. People are talking about agents and talking about agentic workflows and things like that. So we want to differentiate. The term agent has been used for many years, way before large language models or generative AI. It's been used in AI research for a long time. And what we're going to be really using, the term that we really use more now is agentic workflows, because they're like agent-like workflows, right? They don't exactly do all of the stuff that the technical research would have done. There's a professor from Stanford, Andrew Ng, who was talking about. I think he was one of the people who coined the term agentic workflows, or agentic systems. He mentioned that in the past, in the research, it's not exactly the same as what we used to call agents, but it's close enough. And it does agent-like work. And so we're going to define what that is. We're going to see how one works under the hood, and we're going to do, in this case, actually 3 live demos, and we're going to try and break them, right? The goal is not just for it to make a nice workflow, because it's easy to make a prototype. Everyone can make a prototype on these things, on these tools. But the question is where does it actually work and where does it break? Okay, so who's this for? Obviously, if everyone here is in one of these categories, probably, right? So if you're coding, this is where these are the tools that everyone's using, right? In the old days, people used IDEs with autocomplete, and and people thought that everyone was cheating because they were using an autocomplete tool, and some people wanted you to write your code in Notepad and by hand in Vim or Emacs or whatever, right? So this is where the tools are going, right? Meaning, for example, nowadays we don't write, most people are not writing in assembly language. We use programming languages, right? Which translate down into assembly or into machine language, right? If you're building products, right, even without knowing, people now are building products without actually knowing how to code, which is good and as prototypes, and they work, and many people are making money doing something like that. It's to understand what it is that you're doing and what it is that we're trying to do. It's worthwhile to know how to code, right? If you're considering a graduate degree, you're at exactly the right time. It seems like the whole industry is going to explode, but really the direction that everyone's going is probably more towards similar to the way that people thought that all of accounting would die because we had Excel, right? It just opened up entire other industries because we have access to these tools, right? So these AI tools are not taking over everything. They're just opening up other industries and other possibilities, probably. Okay, so where have we been in the past few years, right? So if everyone remembers 3 years ago, right? 3.5 years ago at this point, December 2022, 2023, when I can't remember, it was 2022, when ChatGPT first came out, right? People were a little skeptical, but then everyone sort of dived right in, right? So what is it that was going on in the AI beforehand, right? Beforehand, right? We had we had other AI tools beforehand. They weren't agentic, and they weren't inline edits necessarily. They weren't really chat-based even. A lot of times people were using autocomplete, right? Autocomplete was the first style of the AIs that people brought in, right? So you go into your phone, right? You're going in, you start typing something in, and it presents you with a possible word, right? You start typing in TEH, it says, oh, you probably mean THE, right? Or something along those lines. And before that, we had autocorrect. So the autocomplete here really means it's even more than that. Is you start writing, let's say, a comment on the top of a function, and it will fill out the rest of the function. It will propose some pieces of the function, right? You write the function name, you write it with some of the, you have a code signature, you write the function name, and you write some parameters, and it will fill out what it probably means, right? And that even 3 years ago, that was pretty impressive. We go from autocomplete, and then there became this interaction between the coding environment, the IDE, and the chat bar on the side, right? That was one option. Actually, Cursor came a little bit later and sort of made the chat bar on the side, but people started using ChatGPT, and they started asking questions, and they started putting in the code, and then they got the responses, and then they looked it over, because in the early days of ChatGPT on the web UI was ChatGPT 3.5, and you had to sometimes refresh a bunch of times to get something that actually worked, right? So you would look it over, you'd really evaluate the code, and then you'd put it into your IDE, try out the code, find the errors, put it back in, right? And it sort of created that workflow. Then people started putting, okay, we're going to put the chat bar on the side, right? And now you don't actually have to go over to the ChatGPT interface or whatever other interface there was at the time. A lot of it was ChatGPT, really. That's what people were using. You don't have to go to the ChatGPT. You go into the interface. You go into the IDE. It has the chat on the side. and you're able to do what you were able to do in ChatGPT now inside the ID, and you didn't have to leave, right? So there's two parts that happen there, right? There's the interaction. Initially, you could just have the chat, and it wouldn't affect the code, right? So now, how do you make it that it actually affected the code? Right, that was one of the big first pushes that sort of happened, is you created it using a bunch of diffs, right? You created a diff statement and said, okay, here's, just like we do with Git, right, or GitHub, we create a change list. Here's what we want to change on the page, and it would go ahead and it would now create those changes, and then you click the accept button. So that was sort of the first initial connection between the two. Right now, then you take that chat bar on the side, right? And now you say, okay, now I want it to, you could, right? What people do is they would sort of have like their set of prompts that they would keep in their back pocket. Okay, but now let's say I wanted to just keep those set of prompts and then automatically pop those prompts in every time I wanted. That's what we would, and that's what people would start doing. And so think something like, there was a project, a project called GPT Engineer that sort of wrote its own set of prompts, right? And then allowed you to type in free form what you want to build. And then it built it for you. It would go through its set of prompts. It would go through its stages, its own stages, just like other people would do. They just sort of made sort of best practices. Since at the time it was open source, you were able to go in and change those agents, right, to do what you wanted. Like, this was sort of the early days of agents on software. Now, there were other movements going on at the same time, in terms of, let's say, a LangChain approach. There were a number of other approaches, but this approach of the coding agents is sort of the direction I'm going at the moment. That project, GPT Engineer, became a project that pretty much everyone has heard of. Anyone know what it's called? Anyone want to guess? That became something called Lovable, right? The guy who was running it, Anton, they sort of split off, and they sort of split off, and they created like a group of like 2 or 3 people, and they started working on like the commercial version of it. And then they rewrote the whole thing, because originally it was in Python, and then they rewrote the whole thing in Go or Rust. I can't remember. I think in Go, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and that sort of took on a world of its own, right? Has everyone seen Lovable before?
Yes, I
Yes.
also mentioned you were giving such a wonderful backstory. I was wondering, where did Base 44 come in at?
I actually don't know when that came in, but it's similar. It's a similar idea. I only know a little bit about the story of GPT Engineer and Lovable, because I had been interacting with them at around the time that they created the branch off to do it. I had been thinking about working on some of their projects with them on the open source part. So that's the only reason I happen to know a little bit of that story a little bit deeper.
Both of them.
What?
I said I tried both of them. I subscribed to both of them for about 3 months, and it just like I'm leaning more towards Base 44.
Right. So Base 44, again, I haven't used it in a few months, but from my last recollection, they were really great at UIs in particular. I haven't used it in a long time. I'll be honest. I can't comment on it. I really don't know. What do you like about it? What features does it have that really works well?
It just seems to understand what your prompts are, what you're looking for earlier on than Lovable.
Okay.
Lovable, I know that neither one of them have a back end. So
they do. Not
Base 44.
Well, I mean, Lovable you can set up with Supabase as a back end.
Okay.
Then you can, and Supabase itself has authentication, has databases, it has cloud functions, and it has a whole bunch of other stuff that goes along with it.
So that might be new, but when they
that's a year or 2 ago.
When I first subscribed to it, they didn't have it, but it's great that they have it now.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because that was one of my main concerns, and it was like both of them didn't have it, but I know they were like in direct competition. But what I like about Base 44 a little bit better, it's just that, you know how it's either you like Claude or ChatGPT or one or the other. It's whichever one makes you feel more comfortable in using for the shortest amount of time.
Right. Right. I mean, that it comes back, right? So this is, there's also a trade-off there, right, between Lovable and something like Claude Code, right? We're gonna show you both of them, but Lovable has a trade-off because it is slower, right, and it is only one thread at a time, right? If you're using Claude Code and you're familiar with a coding environment and you're able to really read and able to like interact with the code, you can run multiple versions of Claude Code at the same time, each one of them having multiple subagents. And it can spawn off agents and subagents at the same time, right? So as far as I know, Cursor does background agents, but I don't think Lovable does it. They added a bunch of new features in the past few months. The past 3 months, the last time I saw it, it was different than the previous time I had used it and suggested people use it. And so they keep adding new features. Yeah, someone has a question. Yeah. There's a whole section on subagents. Remind me at the end. I'll show you the documentation. Okay, so what's the difference between what we've been doing up until now, which is sort of the autocomplete, the chat, the inline edit? All of those were sort of proposing, right? They were proposing changes, as opposed to an agent, which sort of takes it to a whole new level, right? An agent adds in the ability to think, to plan, the ability to access outside tools, right? In what we discussed so far, the chat kind of could have some outside tools. Inline edit for sure wouldn't, and autocomplete wouldn't, right? But I could go and there's a program called Context 7, right, which has a very, very high quality version of documentation on many outside products, right? So you go and instead of using whatever happens to be loaded into the LLM's memory, right, about the particular product, it will go out and it will find the most up-to-date documentation. Meaning, if the API changes, but in the last 3 days, so the documentation is updated to be able to go along with that, right? So you can have it. That's just one example, right? Another example of a MCP server or a tool that can call is if I want to have it do end-to-end testing, right? I want to have visual testing on my tool. Now I know that Lovable can do that now; they have that built in. But if I want to do that in my IDE, I can have it call a MCP server, which is a Model Context Protocol, which is just basically another way of calling a tool, an outside tool. It's just it's a language that translates from one type to another. You're able to send information back and forth in like in a clear way and say, here's what I want you to do, right? And so it will come back with a tool call, and it will go find the file, or it will click on the buttons in this particular order, or it will go find what you're looking for, right? So that's sort of the difference between what we're doing, right? So we're going to use the working definition. As an AI agent takes a high-level goal, decides what steps are needed, right? So planning, tools, tool execution, observes results, evaluation, and then this is the key, this is what makes it an agent, is that it adjusts, right? It will go back to each one of those pieces and it will say, oh, there was an error in your code. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to plan out a set of steps, a set of sub-steps to be able to handle that, right? I might not want it to, meaning if beforehand, all we had was a agent doing, maybe we were able to use tools, maybe it was able to do some planning, but it wasn't able to go back in that loop, right? That agent loop, that agentic loop, and figuring out when to interrupt the loop, right? Sometimes you want to interrupt the loop with other events, right? So if you think about, have people heard of OpenClaw?
Yes.
Yes. Some. Okay, so OpenClaw basically is what OpenClaw is it's agentic. It has an agent system that's running, but it also can do things in a time loop, right? Meaning it's not just one loop, but it will also, let's say, every 2 minutes it will go and check something, or it will wait for an event, and when the event happens, it will trigger some set of actions. Right, there was someone I know. This is it was on an AI WhatsApp group, and somehow he wrote, like, I really want X, Y, and Z, and so it came back a long response. Okay, here's how you do X, Y, and Z, and it came from him. So let's pretend his name was Abe, right? So his name was Abe, and Abe wrote, I really want to do X, Y, and Z, and it came back. Okay, here's how you want to do X, Y, and Z. So Abe said, who wrote this, right? Because he didn't write that, and it was coming in his name. So what happened is OpenClaw had been reading all of the WhatsApps. He didn't realize this; he had set it up incorrectly, but it had been reading all of the WhatsApps from this group and from all his other groups, and it was responding to his messages, right? So it's sort of there's an event that happens, and it's able to respond, right? That's sort of what I wanted to bring out the piece there. Right, so it's a little bit more. It's sort of that loop with events built in, with sometimes time events and sometimes action events. Okay.
Someone asked the question, what does OpenClaw do that nothing else can do?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I personally don't use it. I don't use it at the moment. I haven't set it up, so I can't answer that honestly. From the videos that I've seen about it, it seems like other tools are able to do many of the pieces. Xavier, I think, wanted to say something. That's you in my
Yeah,
side,
no,
right?
I think of around the big fuss of OpenClaw. I think one of the main reasons everybody was hyped about it was mostly because of the integration with Telegram, right?
Okay.
Now these other tools like
Right now
WhatsApp.
Cloud Code already has that with
Yeah,
sorry,
now,
with
but
display
then
channels.
back
Sorry.
again, yeah,
Right.
but back again, they didn't have that, and that's what draw a lot of people to
Right.
that.
So it was Telegram, it was WhatsApp, which could be done, but it was all built in. It was the Slack integration and it was the time integration, right? All of those features within the next few weeks, Claude Code added in, Claude added in. So that's why I was hesitating on answering that question. The answer is I really don't know at the moment what the difference, what one does better than the other. I know that it's much better integrated, right? Meaning I'll show you what dispatch is in a little bit when we get to the Claude section. But I find that the idea of being able to WhatsApp the agent and it being able to do the things and respond in real time back and forth, it's a much cleaner workflow than the way Claude does it personally, right? So that's why I'm sort of hesitating, right? And the answer is I'm not sure. Please email me afterwards, and I'll take a look and I'll get back to you. Sounds good.
He said thanks.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. Yeah, if someone could read the questions in the chat. That would be great.
I got you.
I appreciate it. Okay. Okay. So why is this important now, right? First of all, what changed this past year, that sort of agents sort of came back into vogue. Right? When I first started studying back in, I think this was probably 2010 or 2011, I was volunteering in a research lab that was doing multi-agent communication amongst robot soccer players, right? So like we were talking agents then, why are we still talking agents now? What really changed? Well, the big difference is that LLMs added in a lot of capacity, right? It added in the ability to plan, right? It had the ability to plan at the beginning, right? Meaning GPT 3.5 already, you could ask it to plan out something. However, when you hit refresh, it gave you a completely different plan. You asked it 5 times to give you a plan. Some plans were good, some plans were right? And so what really happened now is it really came up with a really good ability to plan, right? About 2 years ago, I think is my guess, from my recollection, someone wants to look it up, is when the MCP protocol sort of started. Now, the fact that I'm using the term that the MCP protocol matured, right? In the old days, 2 years or even 3 years would not be considered a mature protocol, right? Nowadays, we can that's a big difference, right? Like what it sort of stayed. The fact that like the Anthropic came up with this MCP protocol, which is basically, in other words, for computer science people, similar to an API, but without the exact structure of an API. It sort of is a uniform language that's able to write connectors between different programs in a very loose, broad sense. Originally, the third point of why this really started, agentic systems really started kicking off now, is the context windows got big enough. Right? There's actually a fourth reason, is that we started using thinking models as opposed to thinking and reasoning models, rather than just response models. But you could make an argument on that. Okay, so in the Claude family, I want to differentiate between three different pieces, right? There's Claude Cowork, and there's Claude Code, right? Claude is similar to ChatGPT in many ways. So I'm going to open up Claude, right? So this is Claude Desktop, right? I open up Claude Chat. I click on a new chat, and I can ask it, what should we ask it? Write me an email promoting a lecture on.
It doesn't matter if you're logged into your account or not.
What?
I said it does matter on the response.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. It does matter if you logged into your account. That means you're saying it looks different if I'm not logged in?
No, I feel like the responses are more
personalized
specific to you.
Yes, because
don't log in.
We'll get there. There's
like a generic answer, but if you are logged in, it takes your relationship into account.
Because it has access to your memory.
Yeah. So
where is it? Capabilities, accounts, yeah, capabilities. Right, it has access to the memory about you, right? About what it is that you have talked about in the past. You can turn that off. You can turn that on. We can also turn on. We can also turn on a private chat using incognito mode, right? And then that doesn't take into account the memory, right? It doesn't. Incognito chats aren't saved, added to memory, or used to train models, right? So we're gonna pop that off. Okay, so to write an email about a course, about a lecture on how agents are changing software, right? Right, I have access to a whole bunch of different models. I just happen to have picked the most efficient one because it's going to be quick, just to show you what it does, right? What are we working with here? Okay, so what's nice about the tools now is in ChatGPT, etc., and many of them, it will ask you questions. What I really like about some of the tools, and this shows up in Claude Cowork, it also shows up in Gemini, in anti-gravity, which I'm going to show you a little bit later. It creates like a nice UI to ask the questions, right? Who's this email going to, right? Are we announcing a lecture? Is it going to colleagues, an outside speaker? Something I might not have thought to ask, right? What's the tone, right? Okay, so let's say promotional, right? And so now it's gonna come back. It's gonna think it through, right? In the past, right, it wouldn't necessarily have had a thinking process. I happen to have on adaptive thinking, right? So it's going to go through, and it's going to go through a thinking process, taking into account, it's going to essentially build up a larger context to send, to get a more accurate, specific answer, right? So we're going to have our email. It's in a nice little canvas. It's easy to copy. Okay, amazing, right? Many people have used ChatGPT. They've used Claude. They've used Gemini, right? It's the same thing if we go in and we'll go to Gemini, right? I'm going to copy in the same message, right? We have multiple different modes. Oh, we have a new mode here. Okay, great. We're going to put this into thinking mode, and let's plop that in, right? It's going to go through the same process of drafting the email. It's going to go through the thinking process, adding on. Well, it's actually going to open up my email now. Okay. I've successfully identified the user's need, an email concerning agents. I've identified the draft. It's, yeah, okay, we're not gonna load in my personal email. That's sort of the idea. You put in a request, it does some thinking, it does some questioning, it responds, right? That's a pretty classic workflow that we have nowadays. Originally, the chats didn't have all those steps, right? It did a prompt. It gave you the predictive next word, right? It predicted the next token, and it gave you a reasonable response afterwards. Now, what it does is it predicts what a good response, what a good thinking step-by-step would be, a good reasoning would be for the scenario, and then it will give you a response. Sometimes it will ask questions along the way. Okay, that's one type, right? Second type is something like co-work, right? Let's close that up. Co-work now, it adds the ability to work in a particular project, right? So let's say I want to work in, let's create a new folder. This is going to be called right? And so now what we're going to do is we have the ability to allow it to have access to all the files and folders within a particular folder, right? It gives more security, right? It starts off with security. What we also have access to here is we also have access to skills, connectors, and plugins, right? A skill, right, is sort of something that is basically a canned prompt, right? So I use one for, I created one earlier today to translate from something like Markdown files to QTI zip file, right? Makes my life easier. I put in I create my files in Markdown, and it says, okay, here's what I want. Here's the format, right? And I have a whole list, right? Okay, I want to convert Markdown formatted questions to QTI zip file. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what you're going to do. Here's the input format, right? Here's the multiple choice question with a star at the end to say which is the correct answer. And it goes through what the conventions are, and it goes through. It has a automatic Python program that just translates it from one format to another, and then it will output the zip file, and then it will tell you what to do. Right? This is a pre-canned piece that I created earlier today. I created the skill. I didn't write it. I had Claude write it, because what Claude has access to is they have access to a skill creator. And this is a very important idea here, is that it allows you to create new skills, modify and improve existing skills. Meaning they created a skill to create skills and measure skill performance. And this is the key here, right? And this is one of the keys in all of agentic systems and all of the pieces that we're going to be building over time, right? Is how are we going to measure it to see whether we're doing a good job, right? To see whether what we're building actually is useful, right? So we'll run it, we'll have it run an evaluation, and then we'll come back and then we'll adjust the skill to meet the evaluation. And we'll keep going through this process over and over. Yeah, question?
Do you have to code the skill?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. It automatically will run it for you, right? So I'll show it to you in a second. Right. So let's say we're going to create we're going to run skill creator, and I'm going to create a skill that does what? What do we want it to do? Let's say someone said LinkedIn, right? Reads linked in job postings. And what do you want it to do?
Like ask to post at least top 5 based.
And let's make it simple. List the top 5 skills that I need. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have interacting, because that's going to cause issues with the LinkedIn terms of service. That's the reason why I'm a little bit nervous on that one. And list the top 5 skills. I would. Okay, even reading it might cause a problem. So let's see what it does. So this is going to skill creator, right? So let's look slowly at what it's doing. First of all, what it does in cowork is it starts up a virtual machine automatically, right? So it's not running on your actual machine, right? If you look at the top, it creates progress. So first of all, it's thinking, right? So the user wants to create a skill that reads LinkedIn post and lists the thing. First, let me think about what the skill would do. Okay, so it needs to accept, it figures out what it needs to do. It needs to accept the job posting, extract and read it, analyze the required skills mentioned, return the top 5. Okay, let me start by doing that. And so then it goes through and it loads tools, right? It reads different files, right? So it doesn't have any file in there. Okay. It creates a bunch of tasks. If you look over here, it created a bunch of tasks for us, right? So it's going to draft the skills. It's going to write the test cases, right? It's going to run the test cases with and without the skill to see if it actually works. It automatically creates an eval viewer so that a human can review the test cases. Again, this is all built in. I didn't write any of this. This comes baked into Cowork, into Skill Creator. It will write an HTML eval viewer so that a human can review the test cases. It'll then iterate and check and see, and then it will package and deliver the skill, right? So what does it do? So if you see over here, first of all, it's creating, it uses, what's our context? Our context is using Skill Creator, and it's using the LinkedIn job skills. Where's LinkedIn job skills? I believe that's the one we just created, that we're in the middle of creating, right? It also creates this thing called a Claude code. Sorry, not a Claude code. It creates a file called claude.md. Since we're in this folder, I don't think there's anything in here yet. Oh, actually, we should. There was a step that we should have done first, which is a /init command, which would automatically generate a claude.md file, which has a lot of instructions for us. Now, there's some controversy in the research about whether claude.md files help or don't help, but for small cases, it probably does. Okay. So now it's going to use the workspace. It's running a whole bunch of commands, right? It's running these task update commands saying that task 1 is completed. Okay. And so now it's going to write task 2 is now in progress. Now, I don't know why it didn't cross it off. Normally it crosses it off to show us. As you can see, what it's doing is it created a plan and it's executing the plan and it's using tools, it's using actions, right? So that's different than what we used to have, meaning, again, ChatGPT at its beginning, you put in a prompt, it gave you a response. Now, ChatGPT wasn't the first LLM, right? It wasn't the first one that existed. GPT-2 was before it, right? But there were many, many other transformer-based models that responded, and even other type of models, non-transformer-based models, also were able to give a response. Right? Okay, so what's happening here, right? So now Claude would like to co-work in these files. It's asking for permissions. On some cases, it asks for permissions. On some cases, it doesn't, right? Okay, so I'm going to click enter. I'm going to click allow. Right, so what's it doing? Look what it's doing, right? It's now spawning all 6 runs simultaneously. So it's running all these agents, right? Someone asked about the sub-agents. You can see it's running each of these agents all at the same time, right? Running agent, running agent, running agents. It's running all 6 in parallel, right? As opposed to waiting to do it sequentially, it's running all 6 in parallel. Okay. So it's running the commands, etc. Okay, so I'm going to stop this because this was sort of a side distraction. But we could see what we see here is a few things. One is we see that it's able to run commands, right? There's a make directory command, so it's making an outputs directory, right? It's writing out the files, right? It's doing a cat command, right? So it's doing this. It's running this response.txt, and now here's the printout response, right? Here's what actually came out, right? It's running another command. It's running a bash script, right? It's saying echo, I want to put the word test into test.txt, and then echo workspace ready, right? And then look what the output is. It says workspace ready. So it's running all these commands. It's doing all these actions for us. The way it's doing that is it created progress. At each step, you're able to add questions or add context, right? The whole goal, the whole way that we're building these tools out is by increasing the context and getting it more and more precise, right? So I'm able to say, okay, I don't actually want to write the test cases. So it brings in into the context window of what I actually want to do. And then I say, okay, I want you to do whatever. Okay, so that's Claude Cowork, right? Claude Cowork is made not necessarily for the coding tasks. You can use it for coding tasks, but it's not necessarily made for the coding tasks. I often use Claude Code or Claude Cowork for writing lecture notes, right? So actually, all the slides that you're seeing here were all generated using Claude Code. I told it exactly what I wanted, then I went through step by step, and I edited it, and I read through, and I put in a whole bunch of to-do notes, and then I sent it back to Claude Code, and I said, fix these in this way, in this way, in this way, in this way, and it fixed it into the way that I wanted it. Right, then I go in and I edit it, and I do that. I do that for many of my lectures. It takes a number of time, it takes a number of steps, and you have to read through, because sometimes it gets it wrong, but a lot of times it really gets it right. And if you develop a system of how you do it, and this is the same process, not just for lecture notes, but for every other process, you develop a system, you put it into agents, you put it into skills, it will cut down the amount of time and context window that you need. For example, it came up with how long it would take for the sample when I was creating that Canvas quiz one that I got created. It said that it would have taken 110 seconds to translate over the markdown file into a QTI file. But now that I wrote the skill, it only took 35 seconds. Right? It will because it doesn't have to recreate and rethink through the entire process every single time. I'm going to have the agent build us this tool. Okay, so in one of the undergraduate classes, this is one of the projects that we build, which is called Study Stack, which is basically a flashcard study web app where users register and log in. Right? Each user creates decks, which is basically a title and a description, and it creates a flashcard that flips it back and forth. Right? Each deck holds a bunch of flashcards. The users tag the decks and filter the decks. Right? So I'm going to take this, and I'm gonna pop this over into Chrome. 1 second. And I'm going to go into we mentioned Lovable, right? So I'm going to pop it in over here. Right? And I'm going to pop that in. I'm going to click. Okay, so what this does is this is similar to what we've seen before, right? There's a chat window. All right, when I click on the chat window, I'll log in. Okay. Right, so, okay. There's a few different options, right? One option that comes up a lot in any type of work that we're going to be doing is the plan mode. Right, the plan mode allows you to edit and adjust. Right, it's particularly important with AI tools, especially now. They've gotten a lot better, and they're pretty good. And so I would say 85 to 95% of the time it gets exactly where I'm trying to go with it. Right? Okay, good. So let's see what it says. Right. So I need to flag a constraint before we plan this out. Lovable only supports these. I can't build Flask SQL Bootstrap stack here. Right? I can only build it with an equivalent tooling. Right? The question is do we care? The answer is I don't care. I'm okay with that. But we could say stop. I need Flask specifically. Right? I'm okay with using React. Okay. So now the question is beyond the create, read, update, and delete for the decks and cards. Do we want a study experience, right? Do we want spaced repetitions? Do we want the ability to put in a database? No, we also want the simple flip card review, right? We want an email only. And so now, similar to what we saw in Claude, right, where it asked us those questions, the reason why it's similar is because this is based on Claude Agent, right? It's built in using the same tools. Under the hood, this is using Claude Opus 4.7 at the moment. And so now what's it doing? It's creating a plan for us, right? And then we can go in and we can read the plan, right? If you look on the side over here, right, it's going to generate the plan. And we're going to say, okay, well, that looks like a pretty good plan, right? We might change one or two things here or there, right? And so for now, we're just going to click approve on the plan, right? It's going to go ahead. It's going to go through the thinking process. Right, it's gonna go through here, and it's going to build this for us. I'm going to do the same thing this time inside of VS Code. Right, so I'm going to open the folder. Right, we just created a new folder. Touro agentic systems, right? And so now I'm going to say I trust the authors, and we're going to click on the Claude Code button, right? I don't have to do it inside the IDE. I could do it inside somewhere else. I'm going to type in the same thing, and I'm going to put it onto. There's a bunch of different modes. I'm going to put it onto planning mode, right? It's going to hopefully give us the same pretty much experience, right? Since both are using Claude under the hood, right? The difference here is that in a moment, we should see, once we start planning it out, we should be able to see all of the code showing up for us, right? And if you're a coder and you know how to use an IDE, right, this is going to make life a lot easier, right? Now, some people get very afraid of IDEs, right? So there's a third option, right? And this is one that we use a lot in Touro because we have a preference in general for Gemini, is to use anti-gravity, right? Anti-gravity is a similar tool. 1 second. We're on desktop. Okay, I'm not sure where that is, so we're gonna close that out. We're not gonna show it now. Okay, so basically a similar idea. This one has the ability, since it's using Claude Code directly, as opposed to Lovable, which only has the ability to use TypeScript or React and Vite, etc. This one has the ability to build stuff out in Flask, right? Which is a Python framework. So we're going to say public browse, owner only edit, right? We want to include the Flipkart study view. How should tags be entered as a freeform, comma, separated, right? So it asks me the questions of what I'm looking to do, right? And then it starts building it out. So I'm going to pop back over and see what we came up with. Okay, so enable cloud, we're going to allow it. So what I had said before about Supabase, someone asked about the backend, right? So Supabase itself is built in, but Lovable also added, I forgot about this, they added in their ability to do, they have their own cloud system, right? So the cloud system has a built-in backend, database storage auth, also add LLM to your app, it's free to start and you pay to scale, etc. Right? We're not promoting one tool over the other. I just happened to be showing these two tools. We were planning on showing other tools as well. Okay, so now it's writing the 3 recommendations. Okay, while we're doing this, I'm going to come back and make sure that there was not something that I specifically wanted to. Yeah, okay, I want to go back to the slides because a few things while we're waiting that I wanted to make sure to discuss before we get to the questions, right? Okay. Again, so these feedback loops, right, that we're discussing is really what makes an agent and not a script, right? It's not just a piece of code. It actually runs the code, it checks the code, and then it fixes the code, and then it will try it again, right? What it does is it reads, it decides, it acts, observes, and it updates, right? What this means for programmers, right? Our work is not going away, right? Your jobs are going to change, absolutely, and they already probably have changed for many people, right? I know many companies that use a little AI. I know companies that use tons of AI. I've consulted on companies that were completely AI at the very beginning, and then they rebuilt it, once they got further along, right? In the past, what was the loop that we used to have to do? Understand the requirements, write the code, run and debug, and commit. Those are all from write and debug, write code, run and debug, and commit. A lot of times an agentic system does a pretty good job. Is it perfect? No. Does it sometimes write the same thing in 3 different ways? Yes. And then you have to figure out which way you want to do. Okay, yes, absolutely. That's definitely happens. Sort of the new workflow really now is really, as a human, identifying what it is the intent that you're trying to build out, right? We take that intent, we review the plan, right? This is very important. You want to have your human taste, right? That taste is going to be is supremely important these days, right? figuring out what actually works with people and what doesn't work with people. You can do that with agents. Agents can try out a whole bunch of different websites or a whole bunch of different website designs and then give back the information. Let's say someone has a question, we'll just wait 2 more minutes. So we review the plan, we approve the actions, then there's a diff of 2 different of what was there and what's there now. You look it over and you verify it, right? The values that at the moment, the skills that people really need are the ability to write clear specifications of what I actually want. How many times have people, tried to write a specification? They send it off to the developers and it comes back technically right, but not with any human thought process behind it, right? It's build this, and this, and they build this, and this, but it doesn't stand up to any actually humans trying it or thinking about it. That's one thing. The ability is I had one person who we hired. He ended up in the 3 days that he was working on code. I think he wrote about with using AI tools about 30,000 lines of code and that then had to be reviewed, right? So the ability to review the code, use GitHub properly, and review speeds, code review at high speeds is a big skill. Not easy. And you need to be able to see how everything sort of fits together, which leads us to system thinking, right? The things that don't really get rewarded anymore is, the boilerplate code, you're writing the same code over and over again. An AI can write it for you. There's no reason why you should be spending the time doing it. Initial, writing the boilerplate code for CRUD code or for, putting the pieces together, the glue code, that's also not as important. Okay, so I'm going to just pop back over here. We're going to say auto accept, and I'm just going to do one more look at the study stack, right? And so we already have our first app built out, and we can click on preview, right? And we already have here, we have built out for us. We have our sign up page and we have our sign in page, right? We can sign up and it will go into our database system. I don't want to do that right now because we are out of time. And I do want to answer any questions. Okay. Go. Okay, so someone said there. Would you say there are fewer jobs in general in coding and software development because of agentic AI? You hear a lot of different data on that, and the answer is I think maybe temporarily that might be the case. I don't think that that's a long-term the case, similar to the way computers put a lot of people or calculators put a lot of people who were manually calculating out of a job temporarily, but they opened up a lot of other opportunities. I'm going to say that as a optimistic. I have a generally optimistic view on AI. I also recognize the possibility of it being very different, and the answer is cautiously optimistic. But I think it's a legitimate what's it called? Okay, so the question of Lovable. So it happens to be that we use Lovable, but what happens with Lovable, one is it tends to get slow after you try a whole bunch of different prompts. They give you 5 prompts per day. So the real major thing that I would suggest is not using Lovable on its own. It's really to productionize it using something like Claude Code or something like that. Yeah, someone does raise their hand.
Great presentation today. I really enjoyed it. Coming to this, the AI era we are living in right now, the first and foremost thing that I think you highlighted is that it's just people are losing a job. It's opening a new pathways for different skill set. So the example that we just saw right now, building a studies tech app. Now, if as a mentality of software engineer, as experienced software engineer, first and foremost thing that comes in my mind that is this app will take 100 million requests per second.
Yes.
So that's the first thing.
It's built on Supabase.
Yes.
which is meant to be able to scale that up. Now,
Yes.
what I tend to tell people in general is to the first version, as meaning I normally suggest Lovable or something along those lines as like the MVP version, right? So that they can prove that someone actually cares about this app, that 100 million people will actually come on to the app, right? So that's sort of, you don't really care about the code. You care about, is someone going to care about this, right? In the first version. In the second version, where someone actually cared about it and someone's willing to pay for it, which is another big step, right? Then you're already in a different ball game of business development, right? Then I would say hire someone who knows how to use the rest of the agentic systems, right? So that's sort of where Lovable tends to fall in for me, or Lovable tended to fall in for me 6 months ago. Where it falls in today, it's constantly changing. Every few weeks, there's a different benefit analysis on this one about where it falls in, especially with Lovable Cloud and with authentication. So maybe it could handle more, right? The people used to build no code apps with Bubble, right? And I know people who were running their whole business for years using Bubble,
Yeah.
right? Or I knew there was someone that I consulted with 10 years ago who was running his whole business off of Google Sheets, right? So like it's we moved him over eventually, but there's there's this trade-offs, there's fine trade-offs in the business.
That's
Did I answer
correct.
your question?
Yeah. Yes. So that's just trying to highlight here. So the system design, that was a whole big concept. It was always there. And for AI, I'm not sure. I didn't use it personally. I just tried a couple of workflows on my own. But
Mhm.
like you mentioned it, that these AI agents are really capable of, they can implement resilient system. They can
Mhm.
use the actual system design concept, like the one example that I
So they
just
can't.
highlight here. No,
They
I'm
can't.
I'm just telling.
They can start to. They haven't.
Yes.
I have yet to see one that can really do it super well out of the box.
That's correct. So the market is still there, but it's just the skill set is
Mhm.
updated as of now. The
Yes.
one of the slides that you highlighted is what was the requirement to get a job as a software engineer 10 years ago, is
Mhm.
just to know about the concepts of system design, build some code applications, put it on your
Right.
resume, get a job. But now
Right.
it changed. Now after
Right.
10 years, it will get changed again.
But I think after another 6 months, meaning
Yeah.
the speed at which things are moving is exceedingly rapid. Okay, someone was asking about training to get a job. Come to the master's program at Touro. It's awesome. Meaning that there's
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, like in one of we have one of the classes is practice of generative AI. We go from from building from we build out a system, prototype, an entire coded prototype with all of the generative AI concepts, from text to images to audio to video. We go through the ethics. You have to build out from the beginning to end. By the end of the class, this is I think first semester, second semester, you're building out a white paper on a particular use case, right? Yeah, the technology here is changing every day, and the stuff that I'm showing you is within the last 3 months. Some of the stuff I showed you was I didn't show you some of the stuff yet, but the skills evaluation I think was released. Skills 2.0 was released maybe a month and a half ago, maximum. There was other stuff that I had planned on showing you, like the dispatch and stuff, which was more recent. But yeah, the technology here is changing every day. There's a lot of great people, and the stuff that's being taught in the program here is super up to date. In the classes that every semester we have people coming in from industry, giving guest lectures, and for that course, the practice of generative AI, we tried to do it last semester, we're trying to do it this semester to get a number of industry experts to come watch the final capstone presentations. That's first or second semester of probably first semester of the masters. You're already meeting people coming into the program, right? And the head of AI at Touro is top notch, right? There's Professor Argamon. He's top of his game. And I had heard of him back in 2010 2011 as knowing what he was doing from a PhD student that I was friends with, that I was one of his PhD students when he was in another university. So I was like super excited to see that he was here at Touro. So this is a good place if you wanna know what's going on, cutting edge stuff. This is the place. They used the LLMs via chats, but haven't used the agents yet. You wanted to know if there were free versions of the LLMs that do the agentic stuff. I'm on the $20, or I was on the $20 a month plan, and you can do a ton and $20 a month for Claude or for Gemini and for ChatGPT. I'll answer your question in Sayeda in a second. I saw it before. I didn't answer yet. I apologize. Yeah, you can do. There are also agentic systems that are free. They are a little bit more complicated to set up, unless someone else knows exactly how to set it up. I haven't set them up before personally, so that someone else might have the answer to that question. Yeah. No. Okay. But I would recommend, if you want to test it out, the $20 month plan is very, very worthwhile. You should also, if you're a Touro student, you should be able to get onto anti-gravity and log into anti-gravity and have a certain amount of agentic stuff. Actually, no, what I'm saying is not true. No, I apologize. First of all, Lovable is agentic, and it works right off of, and it gives you 5 free credits every day. That's one. The second one is Cursor. Also, I think still has. Does it have a free plan? Someone remember? Yeah, I think it has a free plan.
Yeah.
Gemini Anti-Gravity has a free plan as well. They're very limited on how much they can actually do. Claude Code, as far as I know, does not have that. Okay. So let me answer the next question. So, as a software developer, what would be our new responsibilities, new skill sets, reviewing the code? What else? Software requirements analysis. I think these agentic systems will just tell them what to do, and then improving the application, designing the appropriate prompts. Okay, so the answer to this question is nobody knows. But what it seems like right now, the discussion of many people seems to be, it's writing specific, clear specifications of what is actually needed. Writing skills, writing prompts, writing scaffolding to be able to handle all of the different new systems, being able to integrate with the systems as they go along, being able to review the code, being able to, what else? Be a human in the loop for taste type questions, right? Because it's gonna type code, good code, bad code, right code, wrong code, much faster than I can think, right? Then I can read, then I can think. It's gonna write out specifications faster than I can, right? But it doesn't always get exactly what my intent was. It will get someone's intent or something's intent. Maybe it will contradict itself, less likely, or less likely nowadays, but it won't necessarily get exactly what I intended. It might get close, right? And so being the human that tells it what you want it to design is really, I think, where a lot of the skills are going to be here. If you have any questions about the program or about AI agentic systems, this is my information. Done, but JSKOLNIC, even though my name has a K, it ends with a C, at Touro.edu.